Dr. Sarah Chun had been on the Frontier Research Station for 8 months when she first heard the scratching. The sound came from somewhere in the walls of her sleeping quarters, a soft scraping that made her sit up in the darkness. She pressed her ear against the metal wall, listening to the rhythmic movement that seemed too deliberate to be the station's aging ventilation system. The research station orbited Kepler 442c, a planet the survey teams had nicknamed Fang World for obvious reasons. Everything that lived there seemed designed to kill. The trees had thorns that could pierce combat armor. The flying creatures had acid saliva. Even the grass grew in razor-sharp blades that could slice through synthetic materials. But the most dangerous inhabitants were the shadow maws, apex predators that hunted in family packs and could tear through reinforced steel with their claws. Sarah was the xenobiologist assigned to study them from the safety of the orbital station. Her job was to observe, catalog, and understand these creatures without ever getting close enough to become their dinner. The other researchers called her work monster watching, but Sarah knew these animals were more complex than anyone realized. The scratching stopped. Sarah waited in the silence, counting her heartbeats. Then it started again, closer to her bed. Whatever was making the sound was moving through the ventilation ducts that ran behind her sleeping quarters. The station's automated systems should have detected any breach, but the alerts remained silent. She slipped out of bed and grabbed her tablet, checking the sensor readings. Everything appeared normal. No hull breaches, no contamination alerts, no sign that anything had boarded the station. Yet the scratching continued. Now, directly above her head, Sarah activated her tablet's recording function and held it toward the ceiling. The sound came through clearly, a rhythmic scraping followed by what sounded almost like whispering. But that was impossible. Shadow maws didn't make vocalizations except when hunting or in distress. The next morning, she reported the incident to Station Commander Torres, a gruff man who had spent 20 years on frontier outposts. He listened to her recording with a frown, then pulled up the overnight security logs. "Nothing here," he said, scrolling through streams of data. "All systems normal. Could be the station settling, or maybe some debris hit the outer hull." "Commander, that wasn't debris. Something was moving purposefully through the vents." Torres looked at her with the expression she had grown to hate, the one that said he thought she was letting isolation get to her. "Dr. Chun, you've been up here alone for 8 months studying killer aliens. Maybe it's time for some shore leave." But Sarah knew what she had heard. She spent the rest of the day reviewing the station's defensive systems. The orbital platform was designed to be impenetrable. Energy shields protected against debris and small craft. The hull was made from titanium-vanadium alloy that could withstand direct plasma fire. The airlocks required biometric confirmation and would trigger alarms if opened without authorization, yet something was inside. That night, she prepared. Sarah moved her bed away from the wall and positioned herself where she could see both the ceiling vent and the floor grates. She kept her tablet recording and an emergency flare within reach. If something was in the ducts, she wanted evidence. The scratching began at 0347 hours, just like the previous night. But this time Sarah was ready. She tracked the movement as it progressed through the ventilation system, mapping its path on her tablet. Whatever it was followed a deliberate route, avoiding the main air circulation fans and staying in the smaller maintenance ducts. Then she heard a new sound. A soft thud like something dropping onto the floor of her quarters. Sarah held perfectly still, barely breathing. Her tablet screen cast a faint glow in the darkness, but she didn't dare move to look around. Another thud. Then another. Whatever had been in the vents was now in her room. Sarah slowly turned her head, scanning the shadows. At first she saw nothing unusual. Then her eyes caught movement near the foot of her bed. Something small and dark was moving across the floor, staying low to avoid the light from her tablet. Her breath caught. It looked like a juvenile shadow maw, but that was impossible. The cubs never left their mothers until they were fully grown, and nothing could survive the journey from planet surface to orbital station. Even if one somehow made it aboard, the atmospheric processors would have detected its different biochemistry immediately, but there it was. creeping closer to her bed with the fluid grace that made adult shadow moths such effective hunters. Sarah could see its features clearly now: the elongated skull, the retractable claws, the bioluminescent markings that pulsed with its heartbeat. It was definitely a cub, probably only a few months old. As she watched in amazement, another cub dropped from the ceiling vent. Then a third. Within minutes, 5 juvenile shadow moths were exploring her sleeping quarters with obvious curiosity. They sniffed at her belongings, investigated the corners of the room, and seemed particularly interested in her bed. Sarah faced an impossible decision. Protocol demanded that she trigger the emergency alert immediately. The station's security systems would flood her quarters with knockout gas, then incinerate anything that wasn't supposed to be there. But these were babies, possibly the first shadow moth cubs ever observed outside their natural habitat. One of the cubs approached her bed more boldly than the others. It placed its small claws on the edge of her mattress and looked directly at her. In the faint light from her tablet, Sarah could see intelligence in those alien eyes. The cub wasn't showing any signs of aggression. If anything, it seemed curious about her. Against every regulation in the Xenobiology handbook, Sarah slowly extended her hand toward the cub. It sniffed her fingers carefully, then made a sound she had never heard before. A soft, chirping noise that sounded almost like contentment. The other cubs gathered around her bed, drawn by their companion's apparent approval. Soon all 5 were investigating her with gentle touches of their claws and snouts. They seemed fascinated by her scent, her warmth, and the texture of her clothing. Sarah realized she was witnessing behavior that contradicted everything the scientific community believed about shadow moths. These cubs weren't mindless killing machines. They were intelligent, social creatures capable of curiosity and perhaps even affection. As the hours passed, the cubs grew bolder. They climbed onto her bed, curling up in the warm spaces created by her body heat. Their bioluminescent markings dimmed as they relaxed, creating a soft glow that filled the room with ethereal light. Sarah knew she should be terrified. These creatures would grow into apex predators capable of hunting humans. But watching them sleep peacefully on her bed, she felt something entirely different, a sense of wonder and responsibility. Tomorrow, she would have to decide what to do about her unexpected visitors. Tonight, she simply marveled at the fact that 5 of the galaxy's most feared predators had chosen to trust her with their safety. Sarah woke to the sensation of something warm and purring against her shoulder. For a moment she forgot where she was, assuming she was back on Earth with her old cat, Whiskers. Then reality crashed back as she opened her eyes to find a juvenile shadow moth curled against her neck, its bioluminescent markings pulsing in a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. The other 4 cubs were scattered across her bed, creating a constellation of soft blue-green light. They had arranged themselves around her like protective guardians, with the largest positioned near her feet and the smallest tucked under her arm. Their claws were retracted, and their breathing was deep and peaceful. Sarah's tablet had recorded everything through the night. 8 hours of footage showing 5 predator cubs sleeping peacefully with a human. It was unprecedented data that would revolutionize xenobiology, but it also represented a massive breach of safety protocols that could end her career. Moving carefully to avoid disturbing her sleeping companions, Sarah reached for her communication device. She needed to contact someone, but who? Commander Torres would immediately trigger the containment protocol. The station's military escort would classify the cubs as hostile aliens and destroy them without question. Even her colleagues back at the Research Institute would demand their immediate removal for study. The cub on her shoulder stirred, opening eyes that reflected the tablet's glow like tiny stars. Instead of showing alarm at her movement, it nuzzled closer to her warmth and made that soft chirping sound again. Sarah felt her heart melt despite every logical warning in her head. What am I going to do with you guys? She whispered. The question became urgent when her door chimed, indicating someone was requesting entry. Sarah checked her chronometer and realized she had overslept by 3 hours. Her daily status report was late, which meant Commander Torres was getting worried. "Dr. Chung?" His voice came through the intercom. "Are you all right? You missed your morning check-in." The cubs reacted to the unfamiliar voice with instant alertness. Their markings flared brighter, and Sarah could see their muscles tensing for fight or flight. But instead of panicking, they looked to her for guidance, waiting to see how she would respond to this potential threat. "I'm fine, Commander," Sarah called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "And just running some extended observations? Give me 10 minutes to compile my report." "Copy that. Don't forget we have the supply ship arriving this afternoon." Sarah's blood turned cold. The supply ship meant inspections, new personnel, and most importantly, full sensor sweeps of the entire station. There was no way 5 living Shadowmaw cubs would escape detection during standard arrival procedures. As soon as Torres's footsteps faded down the corridor, Sarah began planning frantically. She needed to understand how the cubs had reached the station and whether their parents were nearby. More importantly, she needed to figure out what they wanted. She pulled up the previous night's sensor data, looking for any anomaly that might explain their arrival. The station's long-range scanners showed no ships in the vicinity, and the planetary surface monitors detected normal Shadowmaw pack activity. Yet somehow these cubs had appeared in her ventilation system. The answer came when she reviewed the maintenance logs. 3 days earlier, an automated supply drone had docked with the station to deliver specialized equipment for her research. The drone had come directly from the planet's surface after collecting geological samples. Sarah realized the cubs must have somehow gotten aboard that drone during its surface operations, but that raised even more questions. Shadowmaw cubs never left their pack's territory, and they certainly never showed interest in human technology. Something had motivated them to take this incredible risk. Sarah began to suspect the answer lay in her research data. For months, she had been studying Shadowmaw pack behavior using high-resolution cameras and audio sensors. Her observations had revealed complex social structures and communication patterns that suggested these creatures were far more intelligent than anyone had suspected. The largest cub, which Sarah had started thinking of as the leader, climbed onto her lap and began examining her tablet with obvious interest. It touched the screen gently with one claw, and Sarah was amazed to see it navigate through her research files with deliberate precision. The cub found her video recordings of adult Shadowmaws and began playing them back. As images of its species appeared on screen, all 5 cubs gathered around to watch. They made soft vocalizations that sounded almost like language. Pointing at specific individuals in the videos with their claws, Sarah realized with growing excitement that the cubs were trying to communicate with her. They had seen her surveillance equipment on the planet's surface and somehow understood that she was studying their species. Their presence on the station wasn't accidental. It was deliberate contact. She began scrolling through her recordings, watching the cubs' reactions to different videos. They became particularly animated when she played footage of a specific pack that lived near her primary observation site. One cub pointed repeatedly at an adult female in the recording, then at itself, making urgent chirping sounds. "That's your mother," Sarah said in amazement. "You're trying to tell me about your family." The concept was staggering. These cubs had somehow planned and executed an incredibly dangerous journey to make contact with the human who was watching their people. It suggested levels of intelligence and social organization that exceeded anything in the xenobiology textbooks, but Sarah's wonder turned to worry as she considered the implications. If the cubs were here intentionally, their absence would be noticed. Adult Shadowmaws were fiercely protective of their young, and a pack missing 5 cubs would be desperate to find them. The orbital station might be the next target of their search. Her fears were confirmed when the station's proximity alarms suddenly activated. Commander Torres's voice echoed through the intercom system, tight with concern. "All personnel to alert stations. We have multiple incoming contacts from the planet's surface. Unknown craft approaching at high velocity." Sarah looked at her tablet's external camera feeds and felt her heart sink. Rising from the planet's atmosphere were dozens of organic structures that looked like massive seed pods. Each one was easily the size of a shuttlecraft and moving with purpose toward the station. The cubs on her bed suddenly became agitated, their markings flashing in rapid patterns. They were communicating with each other in their chittering language, and Sarah didn't need a translator to understand their distress. Their family was coming to rescue them, and they knew it would mean conflict with the humans. "Defensive systems online," Torres announced. "All research staff to emergency shelters immediately." Sarah faced an impossible choice. She could trigger the emergency protocols, report the cubs, and let the military handle what they would see as an alien invasion. Or she could trust that these intelligent creatures had come seeking communication rather than conquest. The largest cub looked up at her, with those startling alien eyes, and placed one small claw on her hand. In that touch, Sarah felt something that transcended species barriers, a plea for understanding, a request for trust between two vastly different forms of life. The approaching ships were minutes away from weapons range. Whatever Sarah decided, she had to act fast. Sarah made her decision in the span of a heartbeat. Instead of reporting to the emergency shelters, she activated her personal communication channel and overrode the station's alert system. "Commander Torres, this is Dr. Chun. Do not engage the incoming contacts. Repeat, do not fire on the approaching vessels. Dr. Chun, get to your emergency station immediately. We have hostile aliens inbound." "They're not hostile, Commander. They're here because of me." The cubs on her bed were becoming increasingly agitated as the station's defensive systems powered up. Their bioluminescent markings flashed in rapid sequences, and Sarah realized they were trying to communicate with the approaching ships. She grabbed her tablet and activated the external communication array, hoping to prevent a catastrophic misunderstanding. "This is Dr. Sarah Shun aboard the Orbital Research Station," she broadcast on all frequencies. "I have 5 of your young safely aboard my vessel. They are unharmed and under my protection." The response was immediate. The approaching organic vessels slowed their advance and began broadcasting complex electromagnetic signals that the station's computers couldn't translate. But the cubs clearly understood. Their agitation decreased, though they remained alert and focused on Sarah. Commander Torres burst through her door without warning, his sidearm drawn and his face flushed with anger. "Dr. Chun, what the hell is going on? You're broadcasting surrender messages to unknown aliens and, He stopped mid-sentence as he saw the cubs arranged around Sarah's bed. For several seconds, Torres simply stared. Sarah could see him processing the impossible sight of humanity's most feared predators, sleeping peacefully in a human's quarters. His weapon remained pointed at the floor, but his finger stayed near the trigger. "Commander," Sarah said carefully, "I need you to listen very carefully. These cubs came here deliberately to make contact. Their families are approaching not to attack us, but to retrieve them safely. If we respond with violence, we'll be starting a war we can't win." The largest cub, sensing the tension in the room, moved protectively in front of Sarah, its claws extended slightly, and its markings shifted to a deeper blue that Sarah had learned indicated alertness. But it didn't attack or show aggressive posturing. Instead, it looked directly at Torres with what appeared to be curiosity. "Those things are killers," Torres said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The survey reports say they can tear through battle armor." "The adults can," Sarah agreed. "But these are children, Commander. And they're trying to establish communication between our species." To demonstrate her point, Sarah pulled up her tablet and showed Torres the video recordings from the night before. The footage clearly showed the cubs' peaceful behavior, their obvious intelligence, and their attempts to communicate through her research data. Torres watched in amazement as the cubs identified their family members in Sarah's surveillance footage. When one cub pointed to an adult female and then to itself, he began to understand the significance of what was happening. "They're showing you their family tree?" he said slowly. "More than that. They're trying to establish a diplomatic contact. Commander, we're witnessing first contact between humans and an intelligent alien species. The protocols for this situation are very different from a standard invasion scenario." The station's communication system crackled to life with new incoming signals. The alien vessels were broadcasting what sounded like mathematical sequences, prime numbers and simple equations that clearly demonstrated intelligence. It was the universal language of mathematics that human xenobiologists had theorized would be used in exactly this situation. Sarah quickly responded with her own mathematical sequences, confirming that humans understood the peaceful nature of the contact attempt. The cubs watched this exchange with obvious approval, their markings brightening to show what Sarah was beginning to recognize as contentment. "Dr. Chun," Torres said, lowering his weapon completely, "I need you to understand that this is completely outside my authority. I'm a station commander, not a diplomatic official. We need to contact Earth Command immediately." "Agreed, but we also need to handle the immediate situation. Those ships out there contain worried parents looking for their children. If we can facilitate a safe reunion, it would demonstrate human peaceful intentions." Torres activated his command interface and began recording everything. "Earth Command, this is Research Station, Kepler 442. We have a first contact situation requiring immediate diplomatic assistance. Forwarding all data streams and requesting instructions. The message would take several hours to reach Earth through the quantum communication relay, and the response would take just as long to return." In the meantime, Sarah and Torres had to manage an unprecedented situation with 5 alien cubs and their increasingly concerned families. The cubs seemed to understand the complexity of the situation. The largest one approached Torres slowly, demonstrating the same gentle curiosity it had shown Sarah when Torres remained still. The cub carefully examined his uniform, his equipment, and eventually his hands. "It's studying me," Torres said with wonder. "They're incredibly intelligent. I think they understand that you're the leader here, and they're trying to establish trust." The cub made a soft chirping sound and gently touched Torres's hand with its nose. The gesture was so obviously peaceful that Torres couldn't help but smile. "I've been in the military for 20 years, he said, "and I've never seen anything like this. These are supposed to be mindless predators, but this one is showing more intelligence than some of the recruits I've trained." Sarah's tablet chimed with an incoming message from the alien vessels. The mathematical sequences had evolved into something more complex, what appeared to be star charts and planetary coordinates. The aliens were sharing information about their home system and asking for similar data about human space. "They want to know about us," Sarah realized. "This isn't just about retrieving their cubs. They're interested in establishing ongoing contact." Torres studied the alien star charts with growing excitement. "Dr. Chun, if this is legitimate, we're looking at the most significant event in human history. First contact with an intelligent alien species, and it's happening here, on my station." The cubs had gathered around Sarah's tablet again, watching the data exchange between species with obvious interest. One of them began making a series of chirping sounds in a clear pattern, and Sarah realized it was trying to contribute to the conversation. "Can you translate that?" Torres asked. Sarah played the cubs' vocalizations through her analysis software, comparing them to the adult Shadowmaw communication patterns she had recorded over months of observation. Slowly, a pattern emerged. "I think it's giving us information about their pack structure," she said. "It's telling us how many adults are in their family group, where their ... is located, and ... She paused as more data processed. "And it's asking permission to bring their parents aboard the station." Torres looked at the 5 cubs, then at the alien vessels maintaining their patient distance outside. These creatures had traveled across the vacuum of space to retrieve their children. But instead of demanding their return, they were asking for permission to meet face to face. "Dr. Chun," he said slowly, "I think we're about to make history." The next 6 hours transformed Sarah's research station into the most important location in human space. As word of the first contact spread through quantum communication networks, Earth Command authorized emergency diplomatic protocols that had never been used outside of theoretical scenarios. Sarah found herself at the center of humanity's first alien diplomatic encounter, with 5 Shadowmaw cubs serving as unofficial ambassadors. The cubs seemed to understand their crucial role, remaining calm and cooperative. As human technicians installed specialized communication equipment in her quarters, Commander Torres had transformed. from skeptical military officer to enthusiastic facilitator. He worked with Sarah to establish a neutral meeting space in the station's main cargo bay, removing all weapons and military equipment to demonstrate peaceful intentions. The Cubs approved of these preparations, their markings brightening whenever humans showed obvious peaceful gestures. The breakthrough came when the largest cub approached Sarah's communication console and began manipulating the controls with its claws. To everyone's amazement, it managed to establish a direct audio connection with the waiting alien vessels. The sound that emerged from the speakers was unlike anything in human experience. It began as a low harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate through the station's hull, then evolved into complex melodic patterns that clearly represented sophisticated language. The Cubs responded immediately, their own vocalizations joining the alien song in harmonious counterpoint. "They're talking to their parents," Sarah whispered to Torres. "Look at their body language. This is a family reunion." Through her translation software, Sarah began to piece together fragments of the conversation. The Cubs were reassuring their families that they were safe and well treated. More importantly, they were describing their observations of human behavior and technology with what sounded like approval. The adult aliens' response carried obvious relief and gratitude. Even without understanding their language, Sarah could hear the emotional undertones of parents reunited with missing children. But there was something else in their communication, curiosity about the humans who had protected their young. "Dr. Chun," Torres said, monitoring the sensor readings, "they're requesting permission to dock with the station." One vessel only, minimal crew. Sarah felt her heart racing. Everything humanity thought it knew about alien contact was about to be tested. These weren't little gray beings in flying saucers, but apex predators from a death world who could easily overpower any human in physical combat. Yet they were approaching with their children as ambassadors and peaceful intentions clearly stated. "Tell them yes," she said. "But let me accompany the Cubs to the docking bay. If their parents see that their children trust me, it should help establish peaceful contact." The largest cub seemed to understand her intention and approached her with obvious approval. It nuzzled against her hand, then moved to the communication console and added its own message to the conversation with their families. What did it tell them? Torres asked that Sarah checked her translation program, though she was beginning to understand the cub's basic communication patterns through simple observation. "I think it told them that I'm their friend, that humans can be trusted." 30 minutes later, Sarah stood in the station's docking bay with 5 alien cubs arranged protectively around her. The cubs showed no fear, but their alertness was obvious. They were about to reunite with their families while simultaneously facilitating the most important diplomatic contact in human history. The alien vessel that approached the station was a marvel of bioengineering. It looked like a massive seed pod crossed with a deep-sea creature, its hull rippling with bioluminescent patterns that matched those of the cubs. As it settled into the docking cradle, Sarah could see transparent sections that revealed the silhouettes of adult shadow maws moving inside. The docking process was surprisingly gentle. Instead of the harsh mechanical connections used by human ships, the alien vessel extended organic tendrils that interfaced with the station's systems like living neural connections. Within minutes, atmospheric compatibility was confirmed and the airlock began its cycling process. Sarah's hands trembled as she prepared to meet humanity's first confirmed alien intelligence. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If the adults perceived humans as threats to their children, the peaceful contact could instantly become a deadly confrontation. The airlock opened with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. The first figure to emerge was clearly an adult shadow maw, but it moved with careful deliberation rather than predatory grace. It was roughly humanoid but larger, with the elongated skull and retractable claws that made its species so formidable. Its bioluminescent markings pulsed in complex patterns that Sarah was beginning to recognize as emotional communication. Behind the first adult came 2 others, moving with the same careful restraint. They were clearly scanning the environment for threats, but their postures suggested cautious curiosity rather than aggressive intent. The largest cub broke away from Sarah's side and approached the lead adult with obvious joy. The reunion was touching despite the alien nature of the participants. The adult enfolded the cub in what was clearly an embrace, and their shared bioluminescence created a warm glow that filled the docking bay. But Sarah was amazed by what happened next. Instead of immediately gathering their cubs and departing, the adult shadow moths turned their attention to her. The lead adult approached slowly, its markings shifting to patterns that the cubs had displayed. When showing trust and contentment, the alien stopped just outside of arm's reach and began making soft vocalizations that reminded Sarah of the communication attempts she had recorded in the cubs. It was trying to speak to her in what she realized was an attempt at human-compatible sounds. Thank, you, the alien said in heavily accented but recognizable English. Sarah's jaw dropped. You learned our language? The alien's markings brightened, and it gestured toward the cubs. Children teach, they watch, they dorn, you kind to our young. The implications were staggering. The cubs hadn't just observed human behavior during their time on the station. They had actively learned human language and taught it to their parents. The speed of their learning suggested cognitive abilities that far exceeded human intelligence in some areas. You're welcome, Sarah managed to say. Your children are remarkable. They came seeking communication, and they've shown us that our species can coexist peacefully. The alien adult tilted its head in a gesture that seemed almost human. We watch you. Watch us. You study with respect, not with fear. Sarah realized the adult was referring to her months of observational research. Unlike human military scouts who treated shadow moths as threats to be eliminated, she had approached them as intelligent beings worthy of scientific study. That distinction had apparently made all the difference. Commander Torres stepped forward carefully, his hands empty and visible. I am the leader of this station, he said slowly. Your children were safe here. We mean no harm to your people. The alien considered Torres for a long moment, then made a decision that would change the course of human history. It reached into a pouch on its organic suit and withdrew a small crystalline device that pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns as its markings. Gift, it said, offering the device to Sarah. Knowledge. Our worlds, Your worlds. Trade, understanding. Sarah accepted the crystal with trembling hands, realizing she was holding technology that could revolutionize human civilization. But more than that, she was holding proof that intelligence and compassion could bridge the gap between completely alien species. As the cubs gathered around their parents, Sarah saw something in their alien eyes that transcended species barriers, the same curiosity and wonder that had driven humanity to explore the stars. These creatures weren't just intelligent predators. They were fellow explorers seeking understanding in a vast and often dangerous universe. The crystalline device in Sarah's hands began to warm and pulse with increasing brightness. As she held it, information flowed directly into her mind. Not through her ears or eyes, but through some form of direct neural interface that bypassed human sensory limitations entirely. Images flooded her consciousness. Vast cities grown rather than built. Their organic architecture reaching toward alien suns. Technologies that manipulated matter at the molecular level. Healing devices that could regenerate lost limbs in hours. And starships that traveled between worlds by riding gravitational currents like sailing. Vessels on cosmic winds, but beyond the technology. Sarah saw something even more remarkable. The history of the Shadow Moth civilization. They called themselves the Kethver, which roughly translated to Seekers of Understanding. For thousands of years, they had explored their region of the galaxy not as conquerors, but as researchers seeking knowledge and wisdom from other worlds. The revelation struck Sarah like lightning. Humans had completely misunderstood the Kethver from their first encounter. When survey teams had labeled them mindless predators, they were actually observing sophisticated scientists studying the new species that had arrived in their territory. The seemingly aggressive behavior was actually careful data collection. They've been studying us just as intently as we've been studying them, Sarah whispered, sharing the discovery with Commander Torres. Through the strange mental connection the crystal provided, Torres received the information with growing amazement. Through Sarah's link with the device, he could see the Kethver recordings of human activities on their world. The aliens had documented every human landing, every research expedition, and every military patrol with scientific precision. But instead of viewing humans as invaders, they saw them as fascinating new subjects for study. The lead Kethver adult, who had introduced himself as Scholar Veltar through the crystal's translation abilities, gestured toward the device with obvious pride. "Your species shows promise," he said, his English improving noticeably as the crystal helped bridge their communication gap. "Few races achieve space travel while maintaining curiosity over conquest." Sarah realized that humanity was essentially being evaluated by an advanced alien civilization. The Kethver had been watching human expansion into their region of space, waiting to determine whether humans were explorers seeking knowledge or conquerors seeking territory. "The Cub's journey to the station was a test," Sarah said, the understanding flowing through the crystal's connection. "They were sent to evaluate human behavior toward alien children." Veltar's bioluminescent markings brightened in what Sarah was learning to recognize as approval. "Young ones, volunteers, dangerous mission, but necessary. We must know. If humans, protect or harm those who cannot fight." The test had profound implications. If humans had reacted with fear or aggression toward the Cubs, the Kethver would have classified humanity as a species to be avoided or potentially contained. But Sarah's protection of the young aliens had demonstrated that humans were capable of compassion toward beings completely unlike themselves. "Commander," Torres stepped forward, understanding the weight of the moment. "Scholar Veltar, I want you to know that Dr. Chun's actions represent the best of human nature. Our species values the protection of children, even those who are different from us." Through the crystal, Sarah could sense Veltar's deep satisfaction with this response. The alien scholar was clearly pleased that his species' assessment of humanity had been confirmed by direct observation, but the conversation was interrupted by urgent communication from the Kethver vessels still orbiting the station. Through the crystal's translation, Sarah understood that other alien ships were approaching the system, and these newcomers were not Kethver. Veltar's demeanor changed instantly. His markings shifted to deep red patterns that clearly indicated alarm, and he began rapid communication with his people in their harmonic language. The Cubs, sensing their parents' distress, moved closer to Sarah and Torres with obvious protective instincts. "What's wrong?" Torres asked, checking his sensor readings but finding nothing on human instruments. "The Devourers come," Veltar said, his English becoming more urgent and clipped. "Ancient enemy. They follow. New species. They consume. Technology and life." Through the crystal, Sarah received terrifying images of the Devourers, mechanical entities that stripped worlds of all organic and technological resources, leaving behind lifeless husks of rock and metal. They were drawn to developing civilizations like parasites to healthy hosts, arriving shortly after species achieved interstellar capabilities. "They hunt young races," Veltar explained. "Humans, new to stars, perfect targets. They come now." Sarah felt ice in her veins as she realized the implications. Humanity's expansion into Kethver space hadn't just brought them to the attention of one alien species. Their activities had also attracted the notice of something far more dangerous, an ancient mechanical plague that consumed entire civilizations. "How long do we have?" Torres asked, his military training taking over despite the unprecedented situation. Veltar consulted with his people through rapid harmonic communication, then turned back to the humans with grim determination. "Hours, perhaps less. They approach from deep space. Your weapons, insufficient against their technology." The Cubs gathered more closely around Sarah, their markings showing complex patterns of fear and determination. Through the crystal, she could understand their simple thoughts. They were afraid, but they were also prepared to fight alongside the humans who had protected them. There is one possibility, Veltar said after further consultation with his people. Kethver ships can defend, but we need human cooperation, combined technology, combined strategy. Torres was already activating the station's emergency protocols, but he paused to address the alien scholar. What do you need from us? Your creativity, Veltar replied. Kethver think in patterns. Stable, predictable. Humans think in chaos, improvisation, DVO yours, ... Adapt to patterns. Cannot adapt to chaos. Sarah understood immediately. The Kethver had sophisticated technology and deep knowledge of the Devourer's capabilities, but they lacked humanity's gift for unpredictable problem-solving. The aliens thought logically and systematically, which made them vulnerable to an enemy that could analyze and counter systematic approaches. You need human tactical thinking, she said. Our ability to be illogical and unpredictable. Yes, Veltar confirmed. Together, we might survive. Separately, we fall. The moment crystallized the choice facing both species. They could trust each other completely and fight as allies, or they could face the Devourers separately and almost certainly be destroyed. The test of human compassion toward alien children had evolved into something much more significant, the first military alliance between species in human history. Torres made the decision without hesitation. Dr. Chun, can that crystal device help coordinate our efforts with their ships? I think so. It's already connecting our minds to theirs. With some modifications, it could link our tactical systems directly to their organic technology. As Sarah began working with the crystal and her research equipment, the Cubs moved to help her with obvious understanding of the urgency. They had become bridges between species, facilitating cooperation that might save both civilizations from ancient mechanical death. Outside the station, sensors finally detected the approaching threat, massive geometric shapes moving through space with predatory intent. The Devourers had found another young civilization to consume, but for the first time in their long existence, they would face not just one species, but an alliance of biological and technological capabilities they had never encountered before. The battle for humanity's survival began with Sarah sitting cross-legged on the deck of her research station, 5 alien cubs arranged around her like living circuit components. While she held a crystal that connected her mind to an entire fleet of organic starships through their Kethver neural interface, Sarah could perceive the approaching Devourers as the aliens saw them, geometric nightmares that consumed light and matter, leaving only void behind. The mechanical entities moved in perfect mathematical formation, their approach calculated to maximize efficiency and minimize resistance. They expect standard defensive patterns, Scholar Veltar reported through the crystal link. Orbital platforms, energy barriers, concentrated firepower. We must give them something else. Sarah closed her eyes and let her mind flow through the connection, feeling the vast organic intelligence of the Kethver fleet. Their ships were living entities, grown rather than built, capable of adaptations that no mechanical vessel could match. But they thought in evolutionary terms, slow and methodical, while the Devourers approached with mechanical precision. What if we don't defend at all? Sarah said suddenly, the idea forming as she spoke. What if we attack in completely random patterns with no coordination or logic? Commander Torres looked at her with alarm. Dr. Chung, that's suicide. Random attacks against superior forces never work. Unless the enemy's strength is their ability to predict and counter organized resistance, she replied. The Devourers have consumed thousands of civilizations. They know how military minds think, how defensive strategies develop. But they've never faced humans working with organic technology. Through the crystal, Veltar's excitement was palpable. Chaos theory, applied to warfare. Fascinating concept. Our ships can adapt in real time. Your tactical creativity? Guiding adaptation. The cubs around Sarah began making soft harmonizing sounds that she realized were actually computational assistants. They were helping process the massive amount of data flowing through the crystal link, their young minds serving as organic processors for the battlefield coordination system. "Everyone needs to understand something," Sarah said, looking around the room at the mixed group of humans and aliens. "We're not just fighting for our survival. We're proving that cooperation between different forms of intelligence can overcome any threat. If we win this, it changes everything." The first Devourer ships entered the system's outer boundaries, their sensor sweeps probing for the expected defensive formations. Instead, they found something unprecedented: human vessels powered by HFY biotechnology. Moving in patterns that defied mathematical prediction, Sarah's consciousness expanded through the crystal link, allowing her to perceive the battle from multiple perspectives simultaneously. She was the human frigate Challenger, diving toward the enemy with its crew shouting improvised battle cries. She was the HFY ship Harmony of Growth, its living hull rippling as it changed configuration mid-flight. She was 5 alien cubs whose biological processing power helped coordinate impossible maneuvers across 3-dimensional space. "Now," she whispered. And chaos erupted across the battlefield. Human ships launched missiles that curved in spiraling patterns, their trajectories guided by HFY biological computers that calculated randomness itself. HFY vessels grew weapons in real time, their organic technology creating new configurations faster than the Devourers could analyze them. The cubs' harmonizing sounds translated into battlefield commands that made no sense individually but created devastating effectiveness when combined. The Devourers' response was initially confused. Their mechanical intelligence kept trying to identify patterns in the human HFY tactics, but every time they adapted to counter one approach, the Allied forces switched to something completely different. It was like fighting an opponent who changed the rules of combat every few seconds. "They're adapting," Torres reported, monitoring the tactical displays. "The Devourers are starting to anticipate some of our maneuvers." "Then we change everything again," Sarah replied, her consciousness flowing through the crystal to coordinate with Veltar. "Scholar, can your ships reconfigure for close-quarters combat?" "Dangerous, but possible. What do you have in mind?" Sarah smiled as the most audacious plan of her life took shape. "We're going to ram them. But not with ships. With the station itself." The research station had never been designed for combat, but it was equipped with the most powerful engines in the human fleet for orbital maneuvering. More importantly, it now housed the crystal link that connected human creativity with HFY biotechnology. "Dr. Chun," Torres said slowly, "that plan is completely insane." "Exactly. Which is why it might work." Through the crystal, Sarah felt Veltar's amazement at the audacity of her proposal. The concept of using a research facility as a weapon violated every principle of HFY warfare, which made it perfect for confusing the Devourer's predictive algorithms. The cubs around her began chittering excitedly as they processed the tactical implications. Their young minds found the plan delightfully chaotic, and their approval flowed through the crystal link to encourage the adult HFY. "All human ships. This is Dr. Chun," Sarah broadcast through both conventional communications and the crystal link. "Execute random evasion patterns and prepare to follow the station's lead. We're going to show these machines what happens when biology and creativity work together." The research station's engines roared to life, pushing the orbital facility out of its stable position for the first time in its operational history. But instead of following a predictable course toward the enemy, Sarah guided it through a spiraling dance that incorporated HFY organic movement patterns with human instinctual aggression. The Devourers focused their attention on the approaching station, calculating intercept courses and weapon targeting solutions. Their mechanical minds processed the station's trajectory as a desperate ramming attempt that would be easily countered. They were completely unprepared for what actually happened. At the moment of apparent collision, the station's hull suddenly rippled and flowed like living tissue. The crystal link had allowed HFY biotechnology to merge temporarily with human engineering, creating a hybrid entity that was neither fully organic nor fully mechanical. The station passed through the Devourer ship's defenses like a living thing, then exploded outward from within as its conventional weapons fired at point-blank range. The destruction of the lead Devourer ship sent shockwaves through their fleet. For the first time in their ancient existence, they had encountered something they couldn't predict or counter. The fusion of two completely different forms of intelligence working in perfect cooperation. All ships, continue random attack patterns, Torres commanded, his voice filled with amazement at what they had accomplished. Don't give them time to analyze what we're doing. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Devourer's greatest strength, their ability to adapt to any predictable strategy, became a weakness when faced with opponents who refused to be predictable. One by one, the mechanical ships were destroyed by tactics that shouldn't have worked but succeeded through pure creative chaos, when the last Devourer ship exploded in a brief flare of light. Sarah found herself surrounded by cheering humans and harmonizing Kethver. The cubs had climbed onto her lap during the final phase of the battle, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with joy and excitement. "We did it," she said, hardly believing the words herself. "We actually did it." Through the crystal link, she felt Veltar's profound satisfaction. "Today," the alien scholar said, "two species became one people. The universe will never be the same." 6 months later, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the newly constructed Human Kethver Cooperation Center, watching as human children played with young Kethver in specially designed recreational areas. The 5 cubs who had started everything held places of honor as the first alien ambassadors to humanity, though they spent most of their time teaching human kids how to climb walls using retractable claws. The crystal device that had enabled their victory now served as the foundation for a new form of civilization, one where biological and technological intelligence worked together to solve problems that neither could handle alone. Human creativity guided Kethver biotechnology to produce medical advances that had eliminated most diseases, while Kethver wisdom helped humans develop sustainable technologies that didn't damage planetary ecosystems. "Any regrets?" Commander Torres asked, joining her at the observation window. He now served as the first human Kethver military liaison, a position that had never existed before their species learned to work together. Sarah smiled as she watched one of the cubs demonstrate proper climbing technique to a group of fascinated human children. "Just one," she said. "I wish I could go back and tell my past self that the monsters under the bed just wanted to be friends." The future stretched ahead of them, vast and full of possibilities. Two species that had been strangers 6 months ago were now partners in exploring a universe that suddenly seemed much less lonely. And it had all started because 5 brave young aliens had climbed onto a human's bed, and she had CNN Cowell,